Hi, everybody. I do want to draw your attention to the note in the chat about an article appearing this very day in the New York Times by Peter Singer, the philosophy professor who coined the term animal rights. It's called Fix Your Diet, Save the Planet. And the coolest part about that to me is that the New York Times chose to run it on this just post-Earth Day. So pretty cool stuff. And something else that's pretty cool is our guest today, and he is Swami Chidananda, whose story is absolutely heartwarming. And he's going to tell it to us now. Welcome, Swami.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you, Victoria, for inviting me.
Well, I would invite you anywhere, anytime, and everybody will become a Swami Chidananda fan during this. So you can Google him and find podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. And there's also a way that you can hang out with him for a weekend. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So start us off today just by telling us about your background and your very unusual spiritual experience.
Sure. I don't think we have so much time to go into the details, so I'll try and make it as short as possible. I grew up in the States, even though I was born in India. My mother moved to the States when I was very young, and I was not very much into the Vedic tradition. There's always a joke that the busiest time of the year in a temple is right before a finals exam. So it's this idea that we go to the temple to make a business deal with the divine. And that sort of understandings didn't really resonate with me. So I was very much an atheist or an agnostic at best. And my focus was very much on material gratification, trying to make as much money as possible. And after graduating university, I started working in investment banking in Wall Street. And I was about to get married. I was engaged. And then through a series of events, I came across the book Autobiography of a Yogi, which is a great book that speaks about a saint named Paramahamsa Yogananda, who came to the States and started to teach something called Kriya Yoga. I read this book, and for the first time, I started to understand the deeper philosophy of the Vedic tradition. Beyond just going to the temple to make business deals, there is a deep underlying philosophical tradition that is thousands and thousands of years old. And as I started to resonate with it, it took me on a trip to India. In India, I met my spiritual guru. The moment I saw him, it's like falling in love for the first time. Like, imagine if you were walking in the desert in the night and it's very, very cold, and you come across a fire and the fire warms you and you find shelter and comfort near the fire. That's how I felt. I felt like I was walking in the desert of material reality for my whole life. And for the first time, I came across somebody that I can say was embodied love. Not human love, but unconditional love. And that feeling made me just give up everything and say, I'm just going to follow you. And for the next 10 years, I just stayed with him every day, morning and evening. I just was with him. I didn't come back to the United States. I didn't go back to work. I didn't see my family or friends. I just lived with them for 10 years. And then after 10 years, he told me, okay, go back to the States, speak about what you learn, share this love. And so then I came back, and I came to New York City, and I started to talk about the Bhagavad Gita and some yogic technique. I started to teach some yogic techniques, and through time, we were able to have a place in Elmira, New York, which is about 4 hours from New York City. We created an ashram there approximately a year ago. And there's about 6-7 monks living here, and we have events and different things. And I would say that's the Reader's Digest version.
Oh, I love it. I'll read that article over again. So where did the veganism come in? You weren't raised vegetarian.
Yeah. So, the last day, the way the my spiritual path worked was that before reading the autobiography of a yogi, I used to drink a lot of alcohol and eat a lot of meat, and also partake in other activities. The moment I started to read that book, something started to shift and change in me, and I started to see reality differently. I wouldn't say that it was a conscious thing. It wasn't, this book said something and it was amazing and now I'm going to change. It was just the vibration, the energy of reading with that book and connecting to that book. It started to make me observe life in a different way. And I started to feel more disgust, if you will, when I started to drink alcohol, when I started to eat meat. And it's not that I stopped, but I started to question it. And I remember the night before I left to India in my travels, I was at the bar with my friends. And that night I drank alcohol, I ate meat, I did some other things. I got on the plane and I never touched it again. The moment I landed in India, I never touched those three things again. And I have to say that's really grace. And for me, when I observe people, inbuilt inside each one of us, we already know deep inside that eating animals, we are causing pain. It's already conditioned. It's already in us. We know this truth. But unfortunately, due to the world, due to material energy that's put on us, we become very, very numb to the emotions and feelings of anybody other than ourselves. And so as you start to go on the spiritual journey, and as you start to experience this love, the natural byproduct of that is to become vegan. It's difficult to love and then still continue to eat meat. They're diametrically opposed to each other. So for me, nobody told me be a vegan, but just the very fact of experiencing love made me just not want to do that. And so that was sort of my transition. And I remember, another story, but that was my transition.
Oh, that's healing at the desire level. It's really beautiful. So I think for a lot of us, the traditions of India can seem very foreign. So knowing that we're all coming from different places and we all have different experiences with the religions of the world, can you just start as if you were talking to a child and explain to us the philosophy of the Vedic tradition? What sets this particular spiritual path apart from some of the others?
Sure. So,
you have 6 years to explain that.
As you know, the Vedic tradition is very, very vast with so many different philosophies, so many different denominations and lineages. To talk about it in a very high level, it's a very sort of monumental task, but essentially what it comes down to is love. So it said that you are love, I am love, everything is love. And this love has three qualities. One is that it's always existed. If you want to put a form to it or formless, it doesn't really matter. That's going to be more dependent on your lineage. But one thing is that it's always existed. The second is that once you've experienced it, there's nothing higher. So when you've experienced that divine love, there's nothing higher compared to that. And the third is that it's constantly looking to experience itself more and more and more. So this love cannot be confined. It cannot be put in a box, and it's constantly ever growing. So one of the ways that it grows is to experience the opposite of itself. So experience what is it to not be this love, a distorted version of this love, a deprivation of this love. And the way that can be experienced is that this divine aspect, which we refer to as the soul or Atma, goes into this material world and forgets itself. Okay? Why does it forget itself? Just to experience separation, longing, and then eventually unity. In the longing, there's an intensity to experience that love again. If I give a glass of water to somebody in the desert and I give a glass of water to you, who's going to have a more intense experience of that glass? of water. It's going to be the one in the desert because they've been deprived of it for 3 days. The same as with love. So this deprivation of love leads to a more intense experience of it. And the way that deprivation happens is that each one of us, where a spark of this love goes into this material creation. And what happens is we are covered by a veil called Maya, or illusion. The best way that you can think about it is imagine you have VR goggles, headsets. Yeah. So you're sitting at your home, you put on the VR goggles. What happens? The moment you put on the goggles, you lose sight of your reality. And then the next thing that happens is a new reality is projected in the goggles and you start to connect with it. The same thing happens to each one of us. We're in a state of divine love all the time. We've never left it. All that's happened is that we put on these VR goggles. We've forgotten who we are. And we've become attached to a reality which is dualistic in nature and completely going up and down. The whole goal of the spiritual path is to remove the goggles and to once again be in a state of love. So everything that we do is to lead us towards removing this veil that makes us forget that we are love. And ultimately, if you want to really just take it to the very, very essence of it, it's to make us fearless. When we are not understanding of who we are, when we associate ourselves with a limited version, we're going to act from a space of fear, anger, greed, lust, whatever you might say. The moment you start to realize who you are, which is eternal, all-pervading, unchanging, ancient, all of these transcendental, then there is no space for fear. You become fearless. You act from a space of love. And that's what the Vedic tradition helps us with, to remove the goggles of Maya and to realize once again our true nature.
Beautiful. So you have opted not to just be a person with a spiritual life. You have opted to be a monk. And that's, I think, a little alien to a lot of us in the States as well. So tell us what that means. And while you're at it, tell us about the markings on your face.
Sure. So we all have a different dharma or duty in this world. Some is to be a monk, some is to be a teacher, some is to be an accountant. And it's not that one is higher than the other. There is no hierarchy in the Vedic path. We've all given a specific task to do, and how we do it determines if we realize who we are or not. Right? So it's not because I'm a monk, I'm somehow closer to the divine, or not because I'm a monk, I'm going to get there faster. The only reason that I'm a monk and you're not is just because that's my destiny, that's my dharma. And that has to do with factors of karma and past lives and all various things that we don't have time to really go into. So that's important. For me, I understood and felt that my life was to be a monk. That's the best way I can be of service. For others, is to be an accountant or a mother or a father or a yoga teacher, whatever it might be. And in the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reiterates to the warrior, Arjuna, on the battlefield, it's not about your duty. It's about how you do your duty, how you embrace your duty. And so that's what I really teach people is, yes, I'm a monk, but don't look at it as hierarchy. There have been great saints. There was once a saint. He was an accountant and he became enlightened. Guess what he did the next day? He went back to work. He started to be an accountant and he would do his accounting from 9 to 5. Then from 6 to 8, he would help people. 8 to 10, he would go and be with his family and he'd start over the next day. So in that way, this life was something that resonated with me, but it's not the only way to realize who you are. Now, the markings on my face, this has to do with the philosophy that we follow, which is called the path of bhakti or the path of devotion. So the two lines here represent the feet of humanity. So it's a reminder that we should always be in service to others. Thus, the line, you're not going to really be able to see it, but the bottom sort of leaf down here, this represents devotion. If you don't love, you can't serve. There has to be some love that awakens in you to be able to want to serve. And this is what I had mentioned also with the vegan aspect. As love started to awaken in me, the natural understanding of this love is, yeah, I shouldn't kill animals for food. So through an awakening of love, we serve. So who helps us awaken that love? So there's a red dot in the middle of this. That's the guru or the spiritual teacher. The teacher helps us to awaken this love. And as we start to awaken in this love, we start to serve. And as we start to serve, this red line represents Maya. We split the illusion of this reality and we start to see it for what it is. So through devotion, we serve, and through service, we rise beyond the veil of illusion through the grace of the spiritual teacher.
So you've used the word yoga several times, and I think a lot of people hear yoga and they think downward dog. What do you mean when you say yoga?
So yoga means union. So it's to come into union with love. So as I mentioned earlier, because of the veil of illusion that has covered us, we have forgotten our true nature. And through doing yoga, we once again rise beyond this veil and realize our eternal nature. So yoga means union. Another definition of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, which means to quiet the fluctuations of the mind. So it's said that only when the mind becomes calm, only when the mind starts to stop to run from one place to another and becomes focused, can we then have the ability to go within. So yoga is bringing us to union with who we are by helping us to quiet the fluctuations of the mind.
So at the beginning of our service, we heard beautiful cow sounds. And I know that in your tradition, all life is honored, all life is one. But there's something special about cows. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So the cow in the Vedic tradition represents an animal that helps. Well, there's a lot of deeper sort of stories associated with the cow. And I have to be careful how I phrase it, because last time I spoke about it, there was some feedback on it. But essentially, the way that we look at the cow, right? Please keep in mind, this is our tradition. If you disagree, no problem. Is that the cow is by nature very giving. Okay, it's always giving. The manure that it produces helps us to farm. A lot of the various elements of it helps us to live in a particular way. It is also said that in our tradition that the cow is protected by the divine and it represents the mother. So the mother is somebody that is constantly giving, 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 but she never asks for anything in return. And the cow is the same way. She gives so much of herself, but never asks for anything. So in that way, she is always seen as a reminder of the grace of Mother Earth, the beauty of Mother Earth. And so when we look at the cow, it's not that we worship the cow as God, right? We don't worship a cow as the same way we would worship an aspect of God, like, for example, Krishna. But when we see the cow, we venerate the cow because the cow, when we see it, reminds us of the beauty of Mother Earth. That's why we put our hands to her. That's why we venerate to her. That's why we bow down to her, because of that reminder of what she represents, the one that is constantly giving without asking for anything in return.
And something very special that some of us will be able to experience the first few days of June is to hang out with some cows at Farm Sanctuary as part of a wonderful in-person weekend retreat, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at the Bhakti Marga Ashram, started by Swami Chidananda and his colleagues. And he'll be there. I'll be there. Dr. T. Colin Campbell, the wonderful nutritional biochemist known for the China study, will be one of our presenters. And it's called The Soul of Ahimsa. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think we really wanted to in the Vedic tradition, a lot of times milk is used for many things. And what makes us very unique is we're one of the first sort of Vedic vegan ashrams, I would say, in the world. And for us, the protection of the animals is very, very important. And it is very much having to do with the philosophy of ahimsa, which means doing the least harm possible. And so we thought that why not combine both of them together to speak about veganism and to also speak about some yogic philosophy, to go deeper into some of the concepts that I had spoken about here. And we thought that a 3-day weekend retreat would be a wonderful way to go into the philosophy, also have some great speakers, including Victoria, speak about veganism, and to come together as a community and to also get to know each other and to connect. So yeah, I think that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to do it, and very much looking forward to it.
Oh, I think it's going to be magical. And I love in this time when all we hear is, oh, people can't get along and people who are different can't talk to one another. And what we're going to be doing is bringing this lovely idea of ahimsa, spirituality, together with Dr. Campbell. He's all about healthy living. Some people say, well, I'm not one of those health people. I'm a spiritual vegan. I'm an ethical vegan. You know what? We can all come together and celebrate. And then adding on that field trip to Farm Sanctuary is going to be the most fun ever. So there's information in the chat about that. Elmira is close to Ithaca, New York, close to Cornell University. So if you're in the Northeast, or if you want to take a trip, then we would love to see you early in June. So we've got about 40 seconds left, Swami. Swami, can you just give us some kind of little thought or blessing to end with?
40 seconds. Sure.
Or 50.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, it really goes back to love and to allow yourself to let something greater than yourself help to support you on your journey. Because a lot of times when we walk this journey, we tend to think we're alone, but in reality, we're not alone. There's that divinity that is always with us. So take the time to feel it in your breath, feel it in your inhalation and exhalation, and know that there's something greater than yourself that has your best interests at hand and is always there to support you whenever you connect to it.
Thank you so much.